Hello Wolfpack, we're going to try and answer the question today, what is the next short-term move for Bitcoin and when will we be seeing that, as well as assessing the macro situation and understanding where we are in the bear market. And not only how long do we have left, but also in terms of actual structural process of the bear market, what is typically meant to happen and what are we doing? Are we following the path or not? But before we get into any of that, I want you guys to check out the cryptoacademy.courses where me and Megawell have made a learn to trade course and also learn cryptocurrency in general. You can chuck us an email there, check out the website, more information. Also check out Wolves of Crypto V.I.P. Click the join button below this video and you can join up the V.I.P. membership there through YouTube for 40 AUD a month, which is 28 USD a month. You get trading signals, 2-hour video on altcoin, on market psychology, and much, much more. But let's jump into it without further ado. So on Bitcoin, we've got the daily chart here and we've actually come down and you can see the daily chart is forming a bearish pennant formation. Now, it's debatable as to whether this actually is a bearish pennant formation due to the fact that on Binance, the lower wick or the lower drop down doesn't necessarily act in accordance with how a pennant formation usually happens. You'd usually see, or you usually draw a pennant from the lowest wick. However, due to the fact that this was a capitulation event and not driven by rational price action, right? This whole drop here from this point was a massive capitulation. It wasn't driven by rational price action. It was a massive sell-off caused by liquidations most likely. And so we're not actually going to count that. I don't think it matters in terms of a TA. We can eliminate that from the process just in the same way as we can almost eliminate the COVID drop from a lot of our analysis. And we do have a bearish pennant formation because of this. Now, as you guys would know, a bearish pennant formation is a formation that typically breaks to the downside. And so we are inclined to be bearish here, even in the short term. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that because it doesn't need to break to the downside. And obviously we are seeing this bearish pennant on major support as well. In fact, not even a major support, but rather a critical support zone. If we're zooming all the way back from February 2021 to January 2021, all the way through to May to July 2021, this has been a macro support zone for Bitcoin for going on 2 years now. And in fact, pretty much 2 years. And so, when we look at this structure and we look at how it's formed and look at the macro structure on Bitcoin, this 30K level, it's going to take a little bit more of a bearish pennant formation on a daily chart to kind of take it down. And so for that reason, I would encourage you guys to understand that, yeah, we are in a bearish pennant formation. Yeah, that typically does mean we need to break to the downside. But, in this scenario, due to the kind of the weight of this support zone, it potentially does become a little bit more complicated than that. Adding to this, we are seeing massively oversold signals coming from something like the Bollinger Bands and the RSI and all of that. Now, look, am I bullish or bearish in the short term? To be honest with you, I'm kind of undecided. I do think that after a sharp move to the downside, you generally have consolidation periods before another sharp move to the downside, and so that would be typical to expect a drop down further from here. I do also think that due to the longer time frame bearish indicators like the death cross and the 3-day chart, which typically in the past, I can bring it up in a second, in the past has triggered a 50% correction in a matter of a month and a half on 2 separate occasions. There are multiple indicators here that are pointing to me and telling me that, hey, this drop is just normal and we need to go further down. But, it's kind of hard to weigh that up against the major, the weight of this support zone. Now, do I think we'll break this support zone to the downside eventually? Yes, of course I do. I'm still bearish. I don't think we've seen the bottom on Bitcoin. That's, incredibly important. I don't think that the bottom is here. I think that we'll go below 30K once more. And I think we'll go back into the 20K region, lower to mid 20K region for sure. But as for whether that happens for short term or not, I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. And the good part about that, and I'm not just saying that just to kind of, you might be thinking, why am I watching this video then? Well, the good part about, this video and what I'm showing you now is that we don't have to wait and see for very long because all we need to wait for is this bearish pennant formation to come to an apex, which is going to be happening basically, well, let's see today's date, within the next 48 hours, right? So within the next 48 hours, sometime within the next 40 hours, we're going to be making a decision on Bitcoin. That decision is either going to drive us up to the 33K price region, possibly up to 35K, or is going to drive us back down into the lower or, to mid to upper 20K range, right? So within 48 hours, we will make a break of this bearish pennant formation and most likely either break the 30K support for downside decisively or break upwards for another dead cat bounce region. Very important. So 48 hours there for Bitcoin. My prediction, don't really know what's going to happen in the short term. I would lean towards the bearish argument. Even though the indicators are oversold right now, even though everything is oversold, due to the way that a bear market works and due to my analysis of previous bear markets, I can confidently say that generally speaking, even when things are oversold in the bear market, it still just keeps going down. But that's the problem. that's one of the benefits of knowing macro, but it's also the problem, because when you're a short-term analyst like myself, it becomes complicated, because if you're saying that, hey, even though these things are oversold, I still think it's going to go down, you're in a sense kind of ignoring the TA and preferring the macro. And so it's a bit complicated to make a decisive decision on what the direction of the move is. But anyway, 48 hours until that direction becomes very clear to the market, and we will see, no doubt, an influx of volume following that. So 48 hours into the breakout of the pennant, and then in the following days that follows that, we'll see that move really start to pick up pace. But as for the bearish macro, as for the 4-year cycle, now I've been bearish on the market since November 2021, since around the 60k region, and so I'm not new to the bearish argument. I have to speak about it quite a lot on my channel, the 4-year cycle theory and all of that. We have the 4-year cycle theory here as listed. A lot of people would be inclined to believe it doesn't exist anymore. I would disagree with you strongly. It's not based on percentages, it's based on date ranges, and the date ranges clearly suggest, as per a very clear and defined trend, that Bitcoin will probably be bottomed out, or at least bottoming out, in November this year. So sometime in this year, probably within November, that region, Bitcoin will reach its bottom, and that is due to the 4-year cycle theory, according to the 4-year cycle theory. Now, it might be a few months, give or take, because it's not a very, consolidated trend yet. It's quite vague, but that is what the trend is suggesting. And so far, we've done nothing to act as though that to suggest that trend is becoming invalid. That trend is still valid according to the cyclical theory, according to what we're looking at right now. So the 4-year cycle says that the bottom's not in yet. The 4-year cycle also says that we need to be going down probably until November or around November. And then looking at something as simple as, the weekly chart with the 50-week SMA and the 200-week SMA, what we can notice is that every time in the past on Bitcoin, we've broken the 50-week SMA after a bull market, which is here in 2014, which is here in 2018, and which is here just before the COVID drop, and also here, of course, in 2021, we've ended up with a 200-week SMA, right? So we broke it here, we went down to a 200-week SMA. We broke it here, we went down to a 200-week SMA. We broke it before the COVID drop, and we went down to a 200-week SMA. And we've never actually closed a weekly candle below the 200-week SMA. And so we have to predict by default that the 200-week SMA will be our bottom on Bitcoin. Is it certain? No, it's definitely not certain. There is a chance we go lower than that. In fact, I've outlined the worst case scenario for Bitcoin, and the worst case scenario for Bitcoin, in my opinion, is 12 to 14k. However, because the historical trend is what we need to go by as investors, invest with the trend until it ends, you have to predict for 200, and the 200 is currently at 22k. And so I would expect Bitcoin to go further downwards towards that 200-week SMA. And the trend is telling me nothing but that, the 4-year cycle and this chart here. And we can bring up many more macro charts, including the 3-day chart, Def Cross, including the Gaussian channel on the weekly chart, which is right here. But I talk about this all the time, and I don't want to get into it too much. But what I can say is that in order for Bitcoin to flip back bullish, now this is something I get asked a lot, right? In order for Bitcoin to flip back bullish, right, we need to be breaking this macro trend. Right now, the macro trend is we break the 50-week SMA, we end up at 200. Okay, so in order for Bitcoin to flip back bullish and go back into a bull market, we need to break the 50-week SMA to the upside. Where is the 50-week SMA? The 50-week SMA is this red line, and it's currently at 44.5k. If Bitcoin can get up to the 50-week SMA and decisively break above it, not like we did a month ago, right? What we did a month ago, and this kind of threw a lot of people off. We went up here in March and we broke above it for one candle, and then we saw immediately a rejection, an evening star formation, and drop below. That's not a break to the upside, right? In the same way that this in July, this slight close below, it wasn't a break to the downside. This was not a break to the upside. When we decisively break the 50-week SMA to the upside, I will be bullish on Bitcoin, and I will proudly state that Bitcoin is in a bull market. However, until that point, Bitcoin is still undeniably in a bear market. But there is information that would throw people off on that, kind of thought process. And before we get into that, I want to check out the BitGet Exchange. In a time when government regulation constantly threatens crypto investors, being able to access an exchange without KYC being mandatory is absolutely exceptional. This is great for me personally as an Australian, because a lot of other exchanges out there like Binance don't allow me to access options due to Australian regulation. BitGet additionally is also host to trading fees even lower than the vast majority of the major exchanges at just 0.2% per trade. Sign up to BitGet using my referral link in the pinned comment below or the description box, and you will receive up to 153 USD deposited into your account as a reward. Now, here's the information that would throw people off, right? The DXY is something that will throw people off quite a bit. and the macroeconomic situation. A lot of people have a lack of understanding on the macroeconomic situation. They don't understand necessarily too much about how interest rates work in relation to the stock market and the Bitcoin market and the cryptocurrency market. And the DXY right now has broken the upside. It's broken resistance left, right, etc. It's got a double bottom formation. It's moving up quite rapidly, but it is seeing, as of recent days, a bit of a bearish engulfing candle and a bit of a rejection coming through here. Now, this is not uncommon to see on the DXY. In fact, we've seen 2 bearish engulfing candles on this move upwards. On both occasions, we actually just continued moving to the upside. In fact, we saw it, another one over here as well. So bearish engulfing candles are not really a big problem for DXY, but every time they do happen, people scream that Bitcoin's going to bounce. And, they are correct on general occasions. When we see the DXY correct, we do see Bitcoin bouncing. The DXY, by the way, is actually a chart that's used to measure the strength of US dollar in relation to assets and other global currencies. And so when the DXY is going down, it means the dollar is getting weaker against global currencies, and when it's going up, it means the dollar is getting stronger against global currencies. And so when this thing goes up, it represents people selling risk on assets into dollars. Why do people do that? Well, they do it because economic times are hard. And what are economic times right now? Hard, right? Cost of living is going up, inflation's going up, companies are under the pressure, individuals are under the pressure. Interest rates, for example, are starting to rise, and there are many more rises on the way, as predicted by the bond yields reaching levels we haven't seen since June 2019, at which point interest rates were at 2.5%. They're currently just at 1%, and that represents interest rates being dramatically undervalued at this point in time, and they need to rise further. And so this whole macroeconomic environment, it's very easily explained, but a lot of people don't understand it because they get caught up in the Bitcoin chart. They look at the smaller 4-hour time frames and try to predict these big reversal zones. They don't understand that it's more than that. It's more than that. It's macroeconomic. It's geopolitical. It's not just the Bitcoin chart. And so that's what I try to do at Wolves of Crypto. I try to bring it back into the larger scheme of things. And the larger scheme of things right now is that people are selling their Bitcoin, they're selling their stocks, they're selling their ETFs, and they're going into cash. That's not good for Bitcoin. Now, I suppose to wrap up the video, what I will say and what I will cover is a few major points. The major points I made in this video were the fact that there's 48 hours until a short-term decision will be made that will potentially develop into a long-term decisive move. And until Bitcoin gets back above the 50-week SMA at 44.5k currently, I will not be bullish on the market. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.